Hello, everyone. My name is Josh, and this is the Skype for Business recap. The always late Skype for Business recap, always in a different place Skype for Business recap. As you can see, we've changed our venue once again. Some pretty scenery out there. With the glare from the sun, you can't really see it, but there's some pretty water out there behind me, and it's a nice day. But we are in a different place. And because I'm doing this so late on a Sunday, I'm not really in an element where I'm away from things. So you may hear kid noises or things in the background or washer dryer sounds, whatever. I apologize for those. Once in a while, the show can be a bit amateurish, but hey, we like to keep it light, right? So that's how we do things. At any rate, it's been a good day, been a good weekend. Went to a very cool exotic animal zoo thing. About 45 minutes, an hour out from here. The kind of place where you go and you get in this trailer that's pulled by a tractor. You buy a big bucket of feed, and you go for acres and acres around on this thing, and you can feed all these different all these animals from Africa, and then some buffalo too. So some U.S.-based animals, camels and springbok, all sorts of different antelopes and things like that come up. Different species of goats. There's llamas. It was a great time. The kids loved it. Let me show you my best moment of the day here. Let's go over to the infinity screen and jump straight. There it is. My buddy the camel. He was so kind as to hold still and pose for a selfie with me. And good times. I tried to master the art of the face he was doing there. See if we could do a twin thing there. I do not think I nailed it. Not quite. I tried. But he was cool to hang out with. He was a good sport. As long as you kept feeding him, he was perfectly content to hang out there, let you pet him, pose for pictures, the whole 9 yards. And all the other animals were super cool too. That was a great time. So if you find yourself in the Central Texas area and want to know where that place is, it's a great day with the kids. Hit me up on Twitter at GetCSJosh, and I'd be happy to share with you where you need to go for that. All right, let's move on to some actual Skype for Business content here. Anthony Carrigal, Office Servers and Services MVP, wrote a great blog post this week sharing a really handy-dandy little tip. This tip is focused on those of us that have custom meeting IDs, reserved meeting spaces. Instead of using whatever meeting ID we might get, we have our own dedicated meeting IDs and for scheduling meetings from our Outlook. However, the problem there is when you go to Meet Now from your client, you don't use that ID. And to get around that, Anthony has written up this great little post here, a way that he's gone through and added a registry key in for this. You can see all the different things that go into the specific location under HKey local machine software, Microsoft Office 16.0, Link, Session Manager, apps, this long GUID. Here's all the information we're adding in there. So very handy. He gives you a nice little walkthrough here. It's not very long at all. Very quick little description. And then he asks for your feedback. And he shows you in this picture exactly where this new menu item is going to go. Under our little gear icon, Tools, Meet Now Dedicated. Isn't that handy? So this is a very handy. It's little things like this that make our end users' lives better. Every end user is different. Every company has different odd demands that they put out there to their contractor or their consulting firm, and finding creative ways to accommodate those demands is what a solid product delivery is all about. And Anthony's done a good job with that there. So thanks for sharing this, Anthony. If anyone else has other ways that you would suggest accomplishing the same thing or something similar, he would love to hear the feedback and the comments on here. So check out this blog post. I'll put the link again below in the YouTube video description. Visit the blog post and give him feedback if you got more. Next up, Trevor Miller. Trevor, great guy. Had a chance to meet him at the Nashville user group several months back, and it was a pleasure chatting with him there. He's put out several good blog posts since that I've seen out on Twitter and LinkedIn. And he always goes very in-depth, very specific, and has a very good perspective on what he's talking about. And this is not Trevor's post. This is somebody else's. And I started rambling on ahead of myself. So I'm going to jump over to Trevor's actual blog. Here we go. UCV next. This is Trevor's blog. We'll jump back over and talk about CCE 1.4.1 in a minute. All right. Trevor is discussing the dangers of SQL Server security hardening for Link Server and Skype for Business Server. As Trevor points out, and I want to make sure I highlight as well, he is not at all saying or advocating that you ignore security on your SQL Server. He is simply saying if you go overboard and just do security for the sake of security and don't take the application into consideration, you're going to have problems. And parts of the Skype for Business deployment are flat out not going to work. And he covers a few different scenarios where this is the case. So read through this, have a discussion with your security guy before you go deploying things for SQL. Let him know these are the things that you might need if they do any of the things that will cause problems. Tell them why you might need a temporary exception or a permanent one, and see if they can accommodate. Most times they will be reasonable if they have a good reason to be and a good explanation, especially if they know it's a temporary thing for a maintenance window. There's a few different things in here. He, of course, highlights all these different compliance requirements that may be why you need to go so crazy on security. But this first thing here, I personally have had experience with renaming the SQL SA account. Everybody knows the admin account in SQL is SA. That makes it that much easier to hack if you already know what the SQL SA account is. So a lot of SQL administrators or security guys say, hey, you need to change that name or disable it flat out. If you change it or disable it, Skype for Business, the deployment wizard, will not be able to successfully run the database deployment, the install CS database scripts without that SA account activated and having that same name. So what I had to do to get around this in the past was temporarily change that SA account back to SA, deploy Skype for Business, run the scripts, and then change the account back to something more secure. And he kind of goes over what the problem is, why it's a problem, and what the fix is. And then he goes into a handful of other things in similar format, and they are very helpful, very informative things. Read this. If you are going to be working with the SQL side of your deployment at all, read this. Watch out for it and be informed so you can have a good, constructive conversation with your security or SQL guys, all right? Trevor, thanks for putting this out there. Very helpful. Next up, Skype for Business Cloud Connector Edition, release 1.4.1. This is by AJ Kakar. Sorry if I said that last name wrong, AJ. This was a post. He was just kind of covering some of the different areas that are new with 1.4.1 versus the older version. We did talk about this a couple weeks back that 1.4.1 was out, and let me highly recommend, from being at the tail end of a deployment in which 1.3.8 was deployed and 1.4.1 had to be upgraded to, just start with 1.4.1 now that it's available. Oh my gosh, it'll save you a headache. I wrote a blog post covering something we're going to go over at the end here, but covering a couple lessons learned. One of them I think actually has to do with an issue that was fixed with 1.4.1, and I've since run into yet another issue that was fixed with 1.4.1. So definitely start there if you can. Some of these things were new settings within the cloud connector.ini file. Others I think were made mandatory instead of optional, like site name. But there's hardware type in there now. Excuse me. He called out a few changes in here. The WSUS settings are new. You can now point to a WSUS server on your internal corporate network to update the VMs automatically. Enable refer support. He talks a bit about that. That was already there. And then this new one, forward PAI, which is P asserted identity. I think that actually fixed an issue I was running into in which the mobile client calls from it would not work like calls from a regular soft client would unless you put a fix at the SBC level to mask all calls from mobile clients as the caller ID coming from a single set number. Otherwise, it would set the caller ID to like a name, like test, instead of the phone number. And that did not go over well at the carrier level. So 1.4.1, great overview of this. Thank you, AJ. Start there if you can. That is a great way to lead into my blog post over on this blog here, the Get CS Josh Skype for Business blog. Friday, I put a post out there. Skype for Business Cloud Connector Edition fails on base VM Windows update. So you get to a step where you're actually install dash, I think it's CCE appliance. It goes through this whole long couple hours spiel of setting up a base, extracting your ISO, building this base VM, installing updates to it, saving it as a hard drive or a template to be used for the other 4 VMs that it builds afterwards. And along that path that script does, the base VM needs to go out and install Windows updates to make sure it's the most up-to-date version of the Windows operating system before it puts these other 4 VMs into production. It could fail on that step for a number of reasons. And when I say fail, meaning Windows Update isn't able to get to the internet and get updates, your firewall rules could be wrong. You messed up your IPs and the cloud connector.ini file. Any number of things that prevent, on the network side, that prevent you from getting out to the internet and doing Windows Update. But let's just say you made sure, your firewall rules are good. Your IPs are good. Your cloud connector.ini file was spot on. It was perfect. But you still can't get out. One thing that I did not see covered in the TechNet documentation that I came across in this deployment was VLAN tagging was in play here. And traffic was not going to get out unless you tagged the VNICs with the proper VLAN that they were on. So since that was not covered in the TechNet documentation, I did not do that. After some troubleshooting with the network guy, we discovered, lo and behold, the VNICs were not tagged. So we had to go into not just the base VM, but all the other VMs afterwards too. And you have to actually go to the network, the NIC settings on each of those, including the base VM, say enable VLAN tagging, and then specify the actual VLAN itself. Hit apply, and a few seconds later, suddenly that VM will start talking to the internet. Those updates will suddenly start working. And the example I gave here, I showed you what it looked like when it was failing on updates, kept trying over and over again. Then I showed you where to go in via the Hyper-V Manager, highlight this little the temporary VM, the base VM that's created. Go to settings, click on the NIC settings. Click on this little enable virtual LAN identification and then put the actual VLAN in there. Hit apply. Boom. After a few minutes, you will see this. Oh, will retry after 30 seconds. Oh, checking Windows updates. Great, I found updates. Now I'm downloading updates. Not anything earth-shattering, but you might find yourself banging your head against the wall if you didn't know to look for this and you were stuck, And you may know your environment really well. But if you are a consultant and you're working on a number of environments and you suddenly find yourself doing a lot of CCE work, you might come across several companies that this is how they do their stuff. So very good to keep in the back of your mind. Of course, I will include the link to that post in the YouTube video description with all the other goodness. All right, Infinity Screen, back to me. I would say have a great weekend and be safe, but the weekend is gone. I blew that. So thanks for watching. Please retweet if you enjoyed the show or found it helpful. Reshare it on LinkedIn or follow me on YouTube or Twitter. I'd be very grateful for the follows, and I will promise I'll try to keep it light and fresh and semi on time each week. I hope that I will be on time this coming week, but for the week following, that will be Ignite, and hopefully, crossing fingers, we can do something special for that. So we shall see, right? We shall see. At any rate, you guys enjoy your week. Hope it's a productive one. Hopefully we'll see you back here, not the same time, but on Friday. In the meantime, that's it. I really suck at winding things down at the end of the show sometimes. I got to work on that. All right. Adios.